Okay, so since some people might be discovering you now through this interview, why don't we start with you introducing yourself and explain, what the meaning behind your name is.
Oh, sure. So, hello, I'm Lise from Aoede, and Aoede means song in Greek mythology. I chose the name because it's affiliated with the muse of song, and she was the first muse, and it's basically to inspire myself and to remember to inspire you continually. And so that's why I chose that name.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you always have that interest in the mythology and?
Well, you know what it was? I wanted, like I said, kind of the affiliation with inspiration, and
Mhm.
I became a muse in a really different way some years later, and I'm sure we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. So it wasn't intentional for, really about affiliation with muses so much, or Greek mythology, but just the inspiration aspect. I really wanted something to affiliate me with the muse.
Okay. Since we're talking about inspiration, what inspires you? What gets you wanting to create music?
Oh my gosh. Well, generally, I see the world around me, my personal experiences, anything that's kind of direct experiential, or something that compels me. It could be a story from real world experience. It could be, something that touches me from a friend's experience or, a family experience or something that moves me in the world. It really depends. Lately, with a lot of health issues going on, I was inspired by many of the people and their stories, and that inspires me to write. So there's inspiration everywhere, and it just depends on how it's channeled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So what's one of the first things you remember writing, and when was that?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the first things I remember writing, honestly, was a blues song, like a blues assignment, and it's called Nothing Special, and I actually don't have a recording of it, but I've played it live, and it probably was back in 2002.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I know that is because I was going through some life transition, and was sort of in that process of finding myself again. And so it was one of those, let's turn to music, let's take voice lessons and become a lead singer in a cover band. And you just try these different things and see what sticks. And that's when I found my muse started speaking to me.
You mentioned cover bands. You were part of one, or what did you play?
Yeah, I was the lead singer for several years in a cover band back in 2002. So I did that for a couple of years through a program called Bandworks that was in the East Bay. It's still in the East Bay. It thrives, and it puts people who want to play music together. And then some of those people who have been put together stay, in bands and keep playing. So for me, it was a great experience to get my feet wet as a lead singer, but it also allowed me to start writing my own music. And that's where I discovered, like I said, my muse started flowing at that point when I wrote my own originals.
Um, what's your favorite part of the whole music process? Like the writing, the recording, the performing?
You know, Two of my favorite parts, definitely recording. There's something magical when you have these visions and ideas and lyric and melody, and it all comes together in a really different way, sometimes than you would even imagine. You can imagine it in your head what it might sound like on a recording, but when you get the players together or separately, just, technology being what it is today, a lot of times you get players all over, sometimes all over the world, that can create music. So it's a different process than just everybody going to a studio these days. Uh, but both the, recording studio aspects and just the process of putting things down and listening to them and changing them, that's one of my favorites. And the other is connecting with the fans and friends that have, developed online and in person. Those kind of are my two favorite parts of the process, because it's when the recorded music reaches the listener, and when people come back to me and say, wow, that song had an impact on me. In fact, it made me pick up my guitar, my dusty guitar that I haven't played in 9 years. You know, that to me is amazing and a beautiful thing that, you know, I can connect with the listener in that way.
What's the most memorable experience you have had on a stage or with a fan?
Well, this is a most memorable for a strange reason. My most memorable was, and I'm laughing because it was kind of crazy. It's what my husband deemed my Marilyn Manson moment. Because what happened is I was going out onto the stage and I hit my head on some risers. And I hit it and I knew I hit it, but I didn't really understand the extent of it until I got on stage, started playing, and apparently got gasps from the audience because there was some blood. And it was kind of bleeding without me knowing, and so I had to stop the set and go upstairs and deal with it, and you know, had basically a little concussion.
Oh my goodness.
And that was on the heels of thing away. So the gig was just, I had learned my grandma passed, and I was going to be on my way to the airport to go, you know, attend to family and her service.
Right.
And so it was a really strange timing because my grandma had just passed, and then I, you know, had hit my head, and I thought, gee, these things happen in threes, and it actually convinced me to write a song called Mercury's in Retrograde, and because that's what was happening during the time. So that was an interesting juxtaposition.
Oh my! Since you brought that up, what do you think about astrology? Do you follow that, or?
No, I don't follow it as a, you know, as a rule or anything. I find there's fascination to me. You know, lots of things are fascinating about astrology, and it's kind of fun sometimes, you know, to peek at it and sometimes see where there's resonance with you. But I don't follow it.
Okay. Since we were talking a little bit ago about some of the changes that happen, you know, with technology and everything, what do you think with all the stuff that's going on now with the technology and like the Kickstarters and all the indie people that are being able to share their music through YouTube and all these things?
I think it's wonderful. I think this is an exciting time for indie artists in particular. You know, I had a different interview where somebody was asking me about what's it like to be a do-it-yourself, you know, indie artist, underground, and what do you think of the competition? And it was, you know, focused a lot more heavily on that aspect. And I couldn't really speak to that very well because I don't look at this, you know, as a competition. I look at this as there's so many avenues to get your, you know, your workout, your expression, but also to connect with your listeners. So all these different avenues, like you're mentioning, you know, you didn't mention the social networking aspects, but Twitter, Facebook, I think that's how we found each other.
Right,
and
it is.
These kind of avenues wouldn't have been possible, you know, years ago. And I think it would have been, it's a lot easier to find, you know, your niche, to find new fans, just to get things out more widely. And Kickstarter for me was a great program. It enabled the completion and release of my upcoming album, Skeletons of the Muse. And in fact, you know, many of the folks from Twitter are backers on my Kickstarter. And so that was kind of amazing and surprising and such a neat thing to happen because it speaks to the relationships aspect. You know, I think, you know, maybe to sum up, to answer your question would be, you have new ways now of reaching and connecting with the fans that are a lot more direct. And so I don't think that was possible or happening as much. And sometimes a lot of the mainstream artists, you know, don't reach out to their fans in this way. So it just makes it, just opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. How did you become aware of Kickstarter?
I guess Kickstarter has been around for a while. I've had, you know, messages and emails and so much inundation from other programs and projects. I've backed other projects, and I've also had friends and artists that have been successful, had successful campaigns on Kickstarter. So I knew of some of their successes, and I knew of things like, you know, people like Amanda Palmer, who within minutes of her Kickstarter, you know, was able to pass her goals. So I guess I've just known about it as a program. I also looked at Pledge Music and Indiegogo and some of the other platforms to decide which was going to be right for me.
Since you mentioned your name, tell us a little bit about Skeletons of the Muse.
Oh, absolutely. So in, I think it's 4 days now. We're 4 days away from the new release. Skeletons of the Muse is going to feature new songs, 6 new songs, and 7 remastered and remixed, songs with different elements from my March 2011 release, Affair with the Muse. And so what is exciting to me about this is Skeletons is kind of about making amends and friends with ghosts of my past, with my roller coaster present, and even my uncertain future. And what it does is it's sort of a great theme for me in a lot of ways that I can use and both, express what I was going through and what I'm going through now, as well as use it as an avenue, to get out some new music. And as an example, I can give you an example for one of the new songs, Perfect Day, was about communicating with a bedridden fan that suffers from a muscle disease, who's constantly in need of support, breathing support. But despite his ailment, he finds empowerment and joy through webmastering and orchestra, and he's very passionate about ship spotting from his bed and discovering and supporting new music. And when I heard his story, I learned about it through a social network called Reverb Nation. It triggered me to write this new song, Perfect Day. And I realized as I was writing it, it wasn't just his journey that I was lamenting, but also my own. And it was the first time I was allowing myself to acknowledge my own limitations. So the reason I bring up that story is because skeletons is sort of, a really loaded word. And I think that I'm finally, at a place where I can release, some of my past and be comfortable with this is who I am and this is part of me. So it has, multiple layers and themes.
So tell the fans exactly what day that they will be able to get this and where the album is going to be available.
Yeah, so the 17th of April 17th is going to be the digital release. They can get it on iTunes, Amazon, etc. And then I will have available on my website. And then physical distribution is probably going to be in May, and that would be in stores. And I'm going to have a list of, what stores are going to be carrying that. So for now, the digital would be available on iTunes as of the 17th.
We were talking, I believe, before we started recording this about a video that you were filming. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what you think of the video making process?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a new music video for one of the songs that's on the new album. It was also on Affair with the Muse. It's called Fairy Tale Love. And we shot the video in January of 2011. It's shot in different locations in San Francisco. And there's some fun and very enchanting themes that you'll see in the video. I don't want to give too much away, but it's kind of what I call a Disney-esque, 1 part Disney, 2 parts fractured fairy tale kind of a song. And so the video really accompanies that and plays on that theme. And that'll also be released on April 17th on YouTube. So, I'll have information about where to find it, and I'll probably put it on my website as well.
Okay. What's your favorite song, if you had to pick one off the album?
Ooh, that's a good one. I might have to pick a couple, so I'll tell you.
Okay.
Perfect Day is one of my favorites that we just talked about. Can't Stop the Music is one of my favorites for just the fun, upbeat, feel-good aspects of it. It's basically when you are in the world and you're noticing that all of the mechanical and, noises that you hear are very musical in nature. That's kind of what the song is about. You can't stop the music. And it's, I'm not sure if you're going to play some of that or preview that today, but it's a fun, feel-good song. And then I guess the other one that I really enjoyed was is Bittersweet. It acknowledges kind of the dark side and the dirty laundry of your past, and you taste kind of the good and the bad in somebody that you love, and so it's kind of speaking to those themes.
How would you say that your music has changed over the past few years?
I would say that I've gotten more in touch with my voice over the last few years. I think part of it is the experiences. I had some health challenges that happened for me a couple years ago, and I really had to think a lot about what my dreams were and how to still keep that songwriter's dream alive when I wasn't performing a lot, or at some points then I stopped performing live, and I wanted to keep that songwriter's dream alive. And so I would say that my work maybe has become more honest and more compelling in some ways because it really speaks from my truth. And I think that's what I'm getting, the feedback from people is that they hear it, they believe it. It's an honesty, and it's kind of this, quirkiness. And I'd say that the difference is I'm kind of, looking at myself as an artist, not necessarily as a band, pushing a band. And so as a singer-songwriter, I'm developing in a way that's allowing myself to be vulnerable. And I think that vulnerability is kind of showing.
Why don't you want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've been going through, and some of the programs that you're involved in?
Sure. The challenges that I'm referring to specifically is I have a autoimmune condition, and it's called dermatomyositis. And don't worry if you can't say it or try to pronounce it, because it took me a couple of years to do so. Basically, it's a inflammation of skin and muscle. But beyond that, really what it is it was a wake-up call, because it changed, some of what I could do. And rather than see it as a limitation, I ended up kind of using the health. I used music as my healing path to get through health. And here's the best example of it. I was hospitalized in 2010 for 24 days for this condition. And when I got out of the hospital, my one and almost only focus, besides dealing with rehab and physical therapy and occupational therapy, was how do I get the music out? So my sights were always set on getting this music out and expressing and connecting, through the music. And so found, PR, and I found the way to get this out digitally, and I, had a new website, and I released an album in 2011, even after, just being in the hospital several months before. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I didn't even know at the time was my story. And the funny thing is my PR guy was trying to find the angle, right? My story. What's your story? And here I am pushing, I've helped co-found Women Rock, which is, this collaborative in San Francisco that empowers women and, raises awareness for causes. I combined environmental causes with my music. I'm trying to find the right story. And here he is saying, so you were in the hospital here, right? And so I didn't even know my story was my story. So I suppose that what I am doing now is using my music, and the creative process to inspire others. And then, another example of that is I was asked to speak. This is where it gets into some of the programs. I was asked to speak at the Myositis Association in Las Vegas in September of last year. So it gave me, an opportunity to do some sort of, not, motivational speaking, you could call it, but also, a chance to perform to the people who really can connect the easiest with me, because they were going through it too. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really neat experience. And so what I hope to be doing is more of that, connecting with folks who might benefit from the inspiration.
What are you listening to right now?
What am I listening to? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so many. I find a lot of new music and inspiration through so many places, but Reverb Nation has been a great source. There's 2.5 million bands and artists on that site. So on a daily basis, I'm always discovering new music. Facebook as well. There's always the band players on Facebook, and there are so many great new artists. But the ones that I keep going back to time and time again are my influences and who compels me most. They're going to be, for me, that's Ingrid Michaelson, that's Regina Spektor, that's Feist, Lily Allen, Aaron McCarley, Miko, Lucy Schwartz. I mean, there's so many that I can, that are hard to name, but I guess what is common to them for me is a lot of women singer-songwriters, and in the vein of, I guess, a little more quirky. That's sort of who compels me most, and that doesn't say that I don't listen to blues or Billie Holiday or Blind Lemon Jefferson or any of these guys. Like I get so much reward from listening to so many different types of music, and it all, I'm sure, kind of seeps in some way.
If you could pick any major artist to collaborate with, who would it be and why?
I guess it would be Ingrid Michaelson, and that's because I have, either, I should say, Ingrid Michaelson and maybe Adele, in my dreams of dreams, because the soul is what I feel. My heart is seriously moved when I listen to these artists. It really gets me, and that's what I want. I want to be able to have the same thing with my own music. And there's something amazing that can happen, I think, when it's so believable. So, I believe these artists without any condition. I listen to them and I feel them.
Can you name one song that you wish you had written?
I guess going on the Adele line right now on the written side, I'm not sure. Someone like you, maybe. This is a hard question for me. I'd really have to kind of give it some thought, because there are so many amazing songs in the world. I'd have to get back to you on, honestly.
Okay. Let's do a little either or. Facebook or Twitter?
Ooh. I use both for different reasons. So I use both. I can't say either or.
Yeah.
I would say Facebook for a little more direct experiences, especially before Timeline. Timeline is going to change things a little bit as far as interaction.
Yeah. What do you think about all that?
I'm still reserving judgment. Initially, I think it's hard to adjust to, but I have certain things that I kind of post my question. I do sort of a playful thing, where I have questions of the day, that people can interact with, and I'm not finding a whole lot less interaction, because of Timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But other things are just harder. It's harder to navigate and get through it. I feel like I have to refresh a lot more. I can't find where people have written comments sometimes, and so I'll miss stuff. And I don't like that aspect. I like to be responsive and connecting more. On Twitter, I would say I'm so surprised by Twitter, to be honest. In the beginning, I felt like it was a little silly and a little superficial to kind of say hi to people, and didn't know, what I was going to be getting from that. And then I realized, it's just like anything else. Relationships build from these little gestures. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's about. It's building relationships with people. And so I really enjoy Twitter as much as well.
Vinyl or MP3?
lately, MP3s, I hate to say it, but vinyl has a place in my heart, but not necessarily in my, in my house right now. I don't even have a record player that's up. I actually have a record player, but it's sitting, under a desk and gathering dust. So I know, much more people have their iPods, and that's how they're listening to music. So I have to go with MP3 at the moment.
Is there anything in particular right now that you're interested in, like as far as like something you're watching or reading right now?
Watching or reading? Well, right now, no. And the only reason I say it like that, it's not that I'm not trying to be paying attention to the world around me. It's that right now is 4 days away from the release.
Right.
So all my efforts have been set on what do I need to do to get this, make sure the PR is set. Like I say, the Kickstarter campaign. So right now I'm knee deep in trying to figure out, all the rewards and who have promised what and what to do. And I'm actually going down to LA for an awards show at the end of the month. And so I'm right now trying to figure out logistics and if we're going to be performing and just doing all that stuff. So my mind is actually very much on all of this release.
What's the award show you're going to?
So the exciting thing, and there's a little background to this, little backstory, is in February, Aoede had received 2 awards from artists in music, and one was for best folk acoustic artist, and the other was album of the year, and they were both just thrilling, unexpected, tickle me pink kind of awards, and I was very touched by it. And just after that, Aoede was nominated from the Indie Music Channel for 3 more categories in the folk, which is really interesting because I consider our music compelling pop for the heart, but it's folky pop, and so I kind of understand in some ways it's not the Britney Spears, Lady Gaga kind of pop. It's much more, sing-songy and folky, I guess. But so this next award show is Independent Music Channel. It's House of Blues, and I think we're nominated in Best Female Folk Artist, Folk Producer, and Best Folk Video under $5,000, and that's for I Lost You Win. So that's a video of ours that's been out for a bit, and so I'm excited just to be nominated again. And again, there's so many amazing talented musicians. It just makes me feel good to be among that pool.
Well, is there anything that you would like to say to anyone listening to this right now?
To say to anyone listening, I would just say number one, thank you. If you're a longtime supporter, I can't do this without you. It really, for me, it's about the friends and fans along the way, and because the music would just sit there, really we need people to appreciate and to share it and just to be moved by it. That's what I'm hoping is, again, for the connection. And for a new listener that is just discovering the music, I hope that you'll reach out and connect with me, because what I found is a lot of times somebody can be initially compelled by a piece of music or art or anything, and they want to know who's behind it, and that's what I'm finding. It's about the relationships. And so that's what I'd say is, please listen to the music, connect with me, and we'll go from there.
Would you like to tell them where they can connect with you?
Sure. So there's lots of ways. We mentioned Facebook and Twitter. I'll just give my addresses really quick. On Facebook, it's Aoede Muse Music. It's AoedeMusic. Twitter, it's just Aoede Muse. My website, www.aoedemuse.com. And even Reverb Nation, which is a great place to listen to music and find lots of talented artists. And it's Reverb Nation /Aoede. So that's a lot of places.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been really fun chatting with you.
Thank you for having me. And I hope, you'll be able to intersperse some music in so that they'll get a flavor of what some of the vibe of Aoede is.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And